Okay, in the absence of the mayor, I'll call the meeting at 7 o'clock. First thing on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I think we've got Daniel Hester from the Trinity Baptist Church here. Give us our invocation.
Let's pray. Lord, you've put government in authority in our lives, and you've commanded us to pray for them. And so, Lord, we do that tonight. We pray for those who you've placed in authority, our government, all the way from the federal level, the national level, down here to our wonderful city of Westfield. We pray for our president and our Congress in Washington, for our governor here in Indianapolis. We pray for our mayor, for our city councilmen and city councilwomen, for all those who are in leadership, for our police force. We pray to just protect them, give them wisdom as they lead, as they deliberate. May they do it with integrity. May they do not just what is best, but ultimately, may they do what is right. May each and every one of us realize that we will all give an account to you one day. Pray you'll bless this meeting. May it honor and glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Hester. Marla Ayler, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Joe Edwards,
Here.
Scott Willis, Cindy Spoljaric. Here. Jake Gilbert, Mike Johns,
Here.
Scott Fry.
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Here. Thank you, Marla. There are no changes to this evening's agenda. It is as presented. The first item on the agenda then is approval of the meeting minutes from June 26, 2023. Councilors, do you have any changes to those minutes?
Do not.
Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Patton, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Cindy Spoljaric.
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We'll move on then to the approval of claims. Claims docket for today, July 10th, 2023. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket for 2023?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Spoljaric, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric.
Yes.
Motion for claims carries 5-0.
We have a short meeting this evening, but we have one filled with several updates as to current projects and activities. So the first item on the agenda then would be an update from Chief Rush on the police department, the new design that they've been working on, and the progress on that new station.
All right. Hi, everybody. President Johns, Council. Thanks so much for putting us on the agenda. We're looking real forward to giving you an update. Exciting times for us. I have with me Scott Jordan, Assistant Chief. He'll be steering this process with me bugging him right beside him the whole time, but It was important to us, it's important to us as an agency to do it right the first time, so I'm putting him in charge of steering the boat during this process. As you remember, 2023, this year, we put just over $1 million into this year's budget for pre-design and schematic design of the new building. We're right about where we want to be. Here we are in July, and we're leaving the pre-design phase and entering the schematic design phase as we speak. The services provided by architecture firms Dewberry, they're out of Chicago, and Kripe, who's a local firm. The current scope of the project is looking to be about 50,000 square feet, with the design expansion of possibly up to 80,000 feet in the future. This is based off of assessments provided by Dewberry on our projected staffing sizes and the city population to that of 2050. We want to build this right. We want to build it one time. We want it to be our home forever. We want to do it right. We're looking at potentially 10 acres on the building site, put it. And the building will also include the informatics data center. Critical success factors, guiding principles, these are our objectives. We want the building to be a reflection of who we are and what we care about. As I said before, this is important to us. We're proud of it, serve this community. We get amazing support from this community, and we want the building to reflect that. When someone goes by that building, we want them to have a feeling of what that looks like and to also be proud of it. When an officer walks into that building, we want it to feel like home to them because they're going to spend the majority of their life there. So it's important for us to do it right. We want to use natural materials, take advantage of natural lighting. We want it to be secure, internally and externally. We want an officer and staff to feel comfortable being inside and safe. That means parking lots, that means inside. Work areas which promote collaboration, common gathering areas, lean use of space, efficient but current, accommodating for current future technology. Shared community room, this is real important to us. It's a room that we can use for training, we can use it for events, we can use it as a emergency operations center, but then when we're not using it, it can be used by the public. We want it to feel welcome. We want the building to be in support of wellness with decompression areas for the officers. The trends right now in law enforcement when it comes to facilities are just that, with a focus on the health and safety of the officers. The emphasis on natural lighting, something as small as that, supports the mental health of the officers and the staff. Safety factors include exterior concrete barriers, secured parking areas, which we don't really have right now. When you're out digging in your trunk, you can get tapped on the shoulder and someone's asking you questions. And it's just not, the officers don't feel secure. So the steps we've taken so far, Scott and I have spent the last 3 years attending conferences on planning, designing, and building of police facilities. We've taken numerous tours of police departments that are like-sized in Illinois and Indiana. We've conducted staff analysis and projections. Needs assessments were conducted and interviews with agency stakeholders. These are stakeholders that represent the different areas, the divisions within our agency. Visioning sessions occurred. We conducted charrettes, which building design modeling workshop with agency representatives. Teams looked at the workflow and the spacing needs within that. Today, we actually signed off on the plan, concept plan, and as I said before, we'll be transitioning into the schematic design phase. Requests for proposals, the RFPQ, with the assistance of the Veritas Group, were sent out on July 5th, and they're due back by July 26th. Next steps, as I said, we're moving into more of the schematic design phase. So we're real excited about seeing floor plans, exterior designs. Right now, it's just models of space. So it'll be real exciting to actually see what the architects have put together. We'll be finalizing building site procurement in the near future and reviewing the scoring of the RFPQ submissions. We want to be real transparent with this process throughout. Right now, we're not speaking about costs. We probably won't have that until we find a partner in the construction side of it where they can get together and come up with real numbers. The last thing we want to do is throw numbers out and have them wrong. So we want to do it timely, but we also want to do it correct. Other than that, 2024, we talk about the 2024 budget. We've put about the same amount of money as we did this year in that, just over $1 million to get us through the construction design and documentation in 2024. We're hoping to start construction in the latter half of 2024 and hoping to have the construction completed at the end of 25. I'm available, Scott's available for questions, and we'll probably need Jeremy's help, depending on where it goes. So.
Thank you, Chief. Councilors?
How many different sites have we identified?
We just have one right now.
Okay. Who owns that property?
I'm sorry?
Who owns that property, do we know?
The Wheelers.
The Wheelers, okay. Are there other properties that would accommodate us? I mean, like if that one doesn't
There
become
could
available?
be. That kind of fits with what our philosophies are.
So it's the same property we were talking about, the one
Yeah,
before?
it is.
Yeah. Okay.
We looked at others, but we keep going back to this one because it kind of fits where we want to be.
From a logistical standpoint, traffic flow?
Yes.
Any other comments?
You don't even have a rough estimate on how much this is going to be?
I can tell you this. Like I said, we're looking at hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 square feet. Cost $550 to $650 a square foot. But like again, we haven't come up with a design yet, so we're just throwing numbers out.
So 550
35 to
60,
42 million.
35 to 40 million, is that roughly ballpark?
Yeah.
Roughly? Yeah. Okay. That gives us a good idea. That's what we need.
Yeah.
How many people, I mean, staffing today versus staffing when it's complete, how many will it hold before we have to expand?
I think it'll get us 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
Right now, we're at 72. We're projected to be at 91 in 10 years. By 2030, we should be around 91. By 2040, we should be around 118. And by 2050, the projections are 153. That's why you really can't build it for 153.
Yeah. Okay.
Chief, this is Scott. I appreciate the input here. I've got just a couple quick questions if I could. So first of all, I guess I've got a couple comments. I appreciate the forward thinking and thought process here of this being a one-time thing and it's our forever home. I like that approach. I appreciate you taking that. The RFP that if I remember correctly, you said it went out on the 5th. You're expecting those responses back by the 26th, I believe.
Yes.
Is there an estimation of, obviously we've got somebody, helping with that process. Is there an estimation of, how many groups we anticipate responding to that RFP?
So, Councilor Frye, this is Jeremy. Obviously, it's a public bid process, so anyone's welcome to bid as long as they're qualified. We directly shipped that to right at a dozen local companies that are capable of doing the BOT type construction methodology. So we had a few right off the list that already responded and said that they weren't interested. I think if we get 8 to 10 respondents, that would be our target.
Excellent. I appreciate that, Jeremy. And then if we've got 8 to 10 kind of as the target, are we anticipating the process for kind of navigating through those and determining here's the direction we're going? Is that going to be a relatively timely process, do you believe, or what would you expect there?
Yes, it'll be a quick process. I mean, obviously, there will likely be some interview opportunities for some of those candidates. We'll want to interview them, get to know them. For everyone's understanding, this BOT process, this is a qualification-based selection process where we already have our design team. Typically, you would have design teams and construction companies or developers coming together to submit proposals, but since we already had our design team together, this will just be construction companies that are willing and able to work with our design team that are proposing on what will be the construction project down the road. BOT will deliver us a guaranteed max price as we get closer into toward the end of next year. As they work through construction documentation, that's when we'll really know. Joel's absolutely right. The numbers that everyone is giving us is right in the $600 square foot range. That shifts $50 either way, depending on obviously the market, but also some of the finishes and some of the other material availability. But yeah, it'll be toward the latter half of next year before we know the actual construction price. And then once we have that GMP, then we are essentially out of the change order business. That's what we know is what our construction project will cost, and then we can go procure financing that way. In a traditional BOT, they also bring financing to the table, and then they transfer the ownership of the project to us at the end. That is an option. In this case, we're actually looking to finance it in a more traditional way like we do our other projects. We would be paying as we go as opposed to one lump sum at the end when they transfer ownership to us. So it's a little different methodology than we've ever done before, but it gives us some flexibility in a really, really tough market because they are technically the owner of the project and they're building it, so they can be more selective on the contractors they use, whereas we are bound by low bid.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the information there. One thing that, and you kind of helped, at least in my mind, bring some clarity to the timing of things from a financial perspective. One other question that I would have, I guess related to that, is, and you said you want to kind of get maybe creative. If I understand correctly, with the new legislation, we can use TIF dollars potentially for a portion of this as well. Then is that part of the plan as well moving forward?
Yeah, it certainly can be, and even without the new legislation, this is a capital improvement that could be utilized. TIF dollars could be utilized. What we were talking about in the Finance Committee earlier is and I believe it's cities under 50,000 people, they can utilize TIF dollars for operating costs for public safety. I don't think that applies to us, but we're gonna fine tune that. Meaning, you can pay police and fire salaries with TIF dollars in those certain communities with new legislation.
Understand. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I would just like to add, I'd like to compliment Chief Rush on the job he's done so far. He did an excellent job of describing what this station will look like, what the project looks like. I know the residents haven't heard a lot of questions from the council on that. One of the reasons is that Councilor Patton, Councilor Fry, and myself were able to accompany Chief Rush on one of those tours as we visited the Fishers Police Department. We saw a lot of the things that he's talking about, the construction techniques, the inclusion of the shared community room, which I agree is so important. So a lot of those things we've seen, I can tell you they're very exciting to us. And Chief, again, from my perspective, you've done an excellent job so far, and just keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on, then, our next update tonight will be that from Chief Gaylor and Fire Department, what's happening with the new headquarters on or the new fire station on Ditch Road and beyond.
Good evening, Council. Rob Gaylor, Westfield Fire Department. I didn't put together a slideshow or anything, more of a kind of a discussion point. Station 81 project, we meet every 2 weeks with the construction company, and our meeting was actually slated to fall on the 4th, so it got pushed back to tomorrow. So I brought with me my notes from the last meeting. Construction is ongoing. Obviously, we're in a different spot than where the police department were, and a whole different process altogether. So we might cross over some boundaries if there are questions and how this process is different than the police station. But right now, the shell is up, painting. They did some final painting 2 weeks ago in the admin area. Working on the sanitary and water line, exterior slab, and grade joint sealants. They're working out in the apparatus bays, hanging some lights, exterior wall packs, and pulling some wire for our station house alerting. Some upcoming things, they're gonna finish the floors in the apparatus bay, the bike rack pad. They filled the bollards out front to protect the doors. Vehicle exhaust system, we call it Plimavent, or MagnaGrip is what we use, which is a diesel exhaust extractor from the building. So those are going in place. They filled and tested some domestic heated and chilled water systems, and they did the sprinkler testing as well. We did run into a little hiccup as they were running through and doing the sprinkler side. The first phase went well, the second phase went well. They got into the third phase of the fill, and we had a leak. And so they were there when it was taking place and got it shut down as quick as they could, and had to, I don't want to say remediation, but essentially they had to go in and do some remediation from some water that leaked into certain areas of the building. Got everything dried out, didn't do any damage to anything that they had in place, but have kept that open to air out. They're looking for bubbles and paint and stuff like that to go back and fix. But another good thing, our generator is shipping this month, so it should ship here on the 18th of July. One of those things a year ago, or almost 18 months ago, when they were talking about ordering that, you wouldn't think that a generator would take almost 18 months to get, but they ordered it as soon as they could, and yet here we are waiting for it to be delivered. They're doing little things in the building. They're putting plate covers on receptacles and switches and things like that. So a lot of the little pieces that may go unnoticed is where they're at in that project. Obviously, we've got to get the sanitary done, and it's got to sit for like 30 days before they can actually hook up the water through the water meters and everything. So they had to bring water in totes and use that to pressurize and charge the water lines that are in place. looking at doing some landscape here in the early part of July. You know, one thing when it comes to the landscaping out there, at the current station and the current headquarters, we have a tree in remembrance of Captain Chad Hiddle that was killed. And we're going to take the tree with us and memorial there. So we're going to wait until later, closer to late summer and early fall, to actually take Chad's tree and stuff with us to move out there, hoping it better for the tree. So there will be some spoil piles in that tree movement later on this year, but you should see some landscaping coming up here in the next about 2 weeks out there at the facility. We don't have a move-in date as of yet, although I feel that we're getting really close. But I would like to extend an invite out to council members. If you guys would like to get a behind-the-scenes tour before we do a public opening, I would definitely like to offer that up to you folks. And then I guess if there are any other questions with the Station 1 project, I can talk about the Station 4 project.
I think we're good.
Okay. Station 84, again, this was a new process for us because, like the police department, we're going to go with the BOT process. And we actually signed an agreement with GKA Services to be our owner's rep / construction manager with that project. Me being a firefighter and knowing just enough about construction to be dangerous, I did that in a past life, but not on a commercial scale. There are always certain things that you go back and, oh, I should have done this, or I wish I would have been able to do that. And having a construction manager come in from the beginning and be hands-on to represent and really be the voice of us to the construction company is a better option than having the fire chief do that, in my opinion. But some of the scope of services that GKA is going to do is doing the project programming piece, much like Chief Rush's group, working with the architectural firms to draw and do the schematic process of their building. They're going to be the programmer of that. They're going to select and help us select the right architects, the right design. We do have a format that we want to use, which is a model off of one of our current stations. We do have land that is already there. We may have to purchase some runway strip, and I'm using that term because we had right-of-way along the road when we did 191st Street that got into some of our property along there, so we may have to get some more property on the backside. So there's a whole process that comes along with that, but GKA is going to be responsible for that project programming, conceptual design, schematic design, overseeing procurement of the construction services, design development, and moving on into construction supervision as the project goes on. The funding for that was actually approved by you guys, City Council, last year, and those are the dollars that we're using to hire the firm. Happy to entertain any questions.
Do you have any anticipated idea of what the funding request will be this year, for next year, for that project?
For the project?
Yeah, yes.
Well, our scale is not 50,000 square feet. I'm assuming that that $500 to $600 a square foot is going to be pretty relative to our project. But I don't think that it's going to, the current building that we're building out there is 36,000 square feet, and we're not going to build a 36,000 square foot Station 4. So I would assume to guess, and this is total speculation, about 12,000 square feet for that outlying station. So, Mr. Patton, you're pretty good at math. What's that work out to?
I don't know.
About a
I use a
$6.5 million
calculator.
project.
And timeline for that, for Station 84?
Timeline, so with the construction manager on the project like this, we get through our initial drawings and put it out for RFP and get that stuff back. Again, with the BOT process, I think that they could be breaking ground in '24. Hopeful to be open and operating out of that station in '25, to be truthful, be nice.
And the equipment, we know that equipment for
Yeah.
fire departments typically seems to take longer perhaps than other equipment.
So right now, good news, right? Good news when it comes to ordering fire apparatus and trucks, engines, things like that. We were sitting at about 40 to 48 months on the time of order till the time of delivery on those. Now we're actually down to about 32 to 38 months on that. So I think that that's substantial in today's day and age. Talking with a fire chief friend of mine, Ernie Malone, down in Indianapolis, they just ordered 12 new units this year, and the price on those was just shy of $1 million a piece. So the pricing is rather cumbersome, as if you wait, you get a price increase for those every year, and the things that they add on, a certain percentage. But for us, you guys approved the order of engine 4, and we've actually already put that in the queue with a vendor to build that fire truck. So it should be here in that late 24, early 25 timeframe.
So can we then expect that there will be additional fire equipment in this coming year's in 2024 budget for Station 84?
Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility. I mean, we need to get things ordered to be here in line for that station coming online. And you put a new engine in service, and just one piece is our SCBA. So they're $6,500 a piece, and I need like 5 of them to go on an engine, let alone to have a spare or 2 laying around the house when one goes down, and other equipment running out of that facility will need some as well. So 10 air packs right there's $65,000, $70,000 just in air packs that go on fire trucks.
Can I ask you just a quick question? And this is, actually, about 6 months ago, actually, when we were, and maybe it was longer than that, when we were going through the police station, and the thing that caught me there was the $550 to $600 a square foot for a fire station. So I remember, and again, I'm trying to find actually the article from the actual firehouse national group that was talking about costs of building firehouses, but they were not even close to that on a square foot basis. In fact, I mean, they were about half that.
When was the article written?
Actually, in the end of 2022. And actually, building costs have actually declined.
They have.
Since that period of time. So I'm just curious, again, I'm gonna find that information, because it doesn't seem like it would be, I'm not sure why we would, and one of the things that they were talking about at the time was labor shortages, obviously, but they said firehouses had more open space, and that's why the cost, one, wouldn't be quite as high as like a, and I'm not trying to bash the police side either. I'm just trying to, I went through and I compared the two when we started talking about, after we went to Fisher's and we did some of these things, and I started thinking, okay, what are the costs? And obviously, I've never built one. I don't know, so I just started doing the research and tried to research from the actual organizations, groups, and the people that are advocates for fire or police or whatever. And so, and this article from Firehouse says current costs are running about $225 to $275 a square foot for bigger. Anyways, I'm gonna find the information, because the 550 just seems high to me, just off the top of my head.
I will say that Station 81 project that we're currently doing is $350 a square foot, so,
350?
yeah.
Okay, so
And that
550 is a
was-
far cry from 350.
That was 2 years ago funding, right, when we approved that project.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'll find the information. There's actually a chart, actually, it shows construction costs on buildings too, and trends. So I'll get that and I'll email it over to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, counselors? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Our next update this evening will be Kevin Todd, Director of Community Development. Kevin, can you fill us in on your new project?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Council. As requested, the planning team has begun and really is pretty knee-deep in the middle of critically reviewing and analyzing our current comprehensive plan. We've met with the Plan Commission, gained feedback from them regarding various growth and development issues in our community, and different topics there that we're taking into consideration. When we're finished with our analysis, we will bring a recommendation for scope of work and services that we believe really should set the stage for a comprehensive plan update next year. I'm hopeful that we'll have that recommendation by early September at the latest for you. As you'll see in when the budget is introduced in the coming weeks, we have budgeted $400,000 for consulting support on a comprehensive plan update next year. And that's really all I have at this point to share. Look forward to wrapping up our analysis here in the coming months and reporting back a recommendation to you at the end of the summer. So I'll take any questions that I may or may not be able to answer at this time, just because we're not done with our work yet. But thanks.
Do we have anything on with the thoroughfare plan? Is that covering that too, you mean? Or is John Neal, anyone going to talk about that?
Yeah, that hasn't been discussed specifically. I think we can look at bringing that in. Usually, my experience is it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? Which comes first, comp plan or thoroughfare plan? Traditionally, in this community, when we've done a comp plan update, and we've done a thoroughfare plan update on the heels of that comp plan update. So I would anticipate that coming later, which will inform the thoroughfare plan. But if you want to run those in a different order or simultaneously, we can look at that.
Weren't we still waiting for an update on that because it got held up?
The thoroughfare plan was supposed to be done, what, every 5 years? Is that?
Well, that was the impact fee ordinance.
Correct. So that's the zone improvement plan, which is the justification for the impact fees. That is separate from the thoroughfare plan. Thoroughfare plan is going to be looking at your land uses, what the projection of traffic volumes in the areas that are undeveloped today, what they should be, so that we can procure right away as those things continue to develop. I'll let John, as a part of his update, give you an update on where we are with the road impact fee study and that zone improvement plan.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And Kevin, thank you. I think you answered our question.
Great.
You're working on it, and you're going to be back by the end of September, mid-September.
That's the hope.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next update then is on the status of capital improvement plans for the remainder of 2023, and then moving on from that point. Jonathan Nail.
Good evening, Council. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. I guess I'll take the road impact fee question off the top. So we are finalizing data collection along all the roadways to get updated traffic volumes for our road impact fee study. I would expect that report to be finalized within the next month or two. I've already gotten some preliminary data back from our consultant to make sure that that's in line with where we have taken other studies and other data collection activities. So I would expect to be able to provide an update on that with a little more detail here in the next month or two. With regards to the capital improvement plan, it should be fairly brief tonight, but I did prepare this slide to help provide a little bit more of a visual representation. In 2023, we're already, it's hard to believe we're already halfway through the year. And our friends at NDOT have closed State Road 32 for their bridge project. I know the community is dealing with that closure currently. I can assure you that NDOT is doing everything they can to expedite that construction work, including longer hours, perhaps some night work as well, to try and get 32 open as quick as possible. When that project is done and 32 is back open, we're going to roll right into the 161st and Oak roundabout project. If you recall, we received federal funding for that roundabout. We have bid that project out. The bid came in right at the engineer's estimate at $2,014,000, and that construction will occur from August into early November this year, already budgeted and paid for in 2023. Additionally, we have another project we bid earlier in the year, 196th Street and Grassy Branch reconstruction. That is the south and eastern borders of North Point, to the north of our city. And that construction has a little bit of remaining utility relocation work to be performed before a contractor can get out there and start road work. But that is on track to begin later this summer. And we did give a fairly extended timeline to that contractor in hopes of providing some flexibility for hopefully favorable bid pricing that we received for that construction work. So you'll see some payments in 2023 with carryover in 2024. So you'll see items both in the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget. As a reminder, a typical budget process like you'd see in a corporation is a bit of a challenge for Public Works because we have large projects that we pay contractors as the work is performed. And if that project extends over a 12-month period, starting in June and ending in June, for example, if that shifts 2 months, then some budget numbers can change quite quickly because of that shift. Additionally, weather and utility relocation can cause some problems. So we do our best to budget in the correct years. Occasionally, we'll need to carry over dollars from a 2023 budget to a 2024 budget, which is the case on some of these projects that you'll see on the screen today. Tomlinson Road widening, I know this is an important one for several members of the council and the community's been very vocal about the need for this project. We are working with Duke Energy for a relocation plan. The overhead electric poles are very close to the roadway. The widening will occur to the east, and that will necessitate the relocation of those overhead electric poles. And so as soon as Duke has a relocation plan in place, we will give them notice to proceed to start relocating. Once those poles are relocated, construction can start. We're still hopeful to get construction started in 2023, but I do have money in the 2024 budget as well in case that carries over into the spring. So as we get more information from Duke, we'll make a decision on whether we can start construction in 2023 or if we need to start fresh spring of 24. Not enough information tonight to tell you for sure one way or the other.
Please keep me posted on that particular project.
I will do so.
I have had several calls today from residents who've offered to call Duke themselves to help support the project. So,
And they said they called the news, they saw the emails.
Okay,
I mean,
they're pretty excited about trying to get it going.
Yeah.
So, and rightfully so. It is a safety hazard.
Yeah, and that pressure may help move the process along. We're certainly pushing as hard as we can on our end as well. State Road 32 reconstruction, I know I've talked about this several times with the council, and not much more to add. It is budgeted for 2023. And similarly, Jersey Street extension, is a project that is budgeted for 2023. We're still working through one remaining parcel for right-of-way acquisition and still need to relocate some utilities. It is possible that that slips to spring of '24. Again, we'll know more later in the year once we get through that acquisition process.
Is that Jersey Street or is that 32? It's gonna,
I was speaking specifically about Jersey Street for that one remaining parcel.
32 is still on target for being let sometime.
Yeah, correct. Officially, that is the case as of today. Again, I'll keep the council posted as we work through utility relocations. That's a theme for my presentation tonight is these utilities, we work with them in advance as we're working through the design. We receive a relocation plan from all the utilities that are impacted by a project, and they provide a timeline for them to relocate, which is contingent on right-of-way being clear. And there's an order of operations to utility relocation. So oftentimes you'll see overhead electric with communication lines underneath those electric lines. And Duke will have to relocate those poles first. And then before they pull the old poles, the communication lines have to move over. And so one can't start without the other one beginning. And so it is very much a sequential process. And unfortunately, several utilities in the community have been very slow to relocate over the last couple of years. We try our best to push them as best we can, but they do have the right to be in the right of way. So moving on, Mule Barn Road widening. I know that's another important project that we've talked about. If you recall, we had an interlocal agreement with NDOT where we added some intersection improvement work into the scope of our project, and NDOT will be reimbursing us for that work. Since then, we did do additional geotech work for Mule Barn. For lack of a better term, the pavement is quite bad, and we are going to have to do some pretty substantial reconstruction in addition to the widening. So you'll see a little bit of a construction cost increase from previous estimates. That's to reflect a reconstruction of that road. If we only widen and do a mill and resurface like we originally had planned, that may hold for 3 or 4 years, and then that pavement will be just as bad as it is today. It's better to go in and do it right the first time. So that's why you see an increase in construction costs. We're working through right-of-way acquisition currently and coordination with Country Mark on that project with some drainage design. So again, looking to get started in the fall, and there's a budget which will have some carryover from 2023 into 2024 on that project. The downtown drainage project, part of the ARPA money that we received, the Union College, Roosevelt, and Cherry drainage. We have design ongoing. We are finalizing some of those plans and still looking to bid that in 2023. That one is not in the budget because Public Works does not control the ARPA budget per se. If you'd like additional information, or Councilor Spoljaric, if you we can work together on how we best budget for that. But that's not one of the budgets that I have in my purview. So let me know how you want to handle that. 151st Street Trail connection from Oak to the trail that exists on the south side at Cary. That is a project that we'll be looking to start next year. We had some money budgeted in 2024, and again, there will be some carryover money from 2023 into 2024. It's simply a trail project, but there's also a bridge widening project that carries that trail over Cool Creek. So it's a little more complicated than just a standard trail. 151st and Town Roundabout, we received rule call NDOT federal funding on that project. Our 20% match for construction is budgeted in 2024, and that project will start in 2024. 181st and Wheeler, we were fortunate enough to receive federal funding for that roundabout project as well. We've worked with the Indianapolis MPO to try and accelerate that project. We received funding for it in fiscal year 2027. If you recall, when we apply for these funds, it's 5 years out before we actually receive them. We are going to construct that as quickly as we can and then get reimbursed by the MPO in 2027 when the federal dollars, actually state dollars, become available for reimbursement. So we're still getting the full 80-20 match on the project, but we recognize that that's a intersection that can't wait until 2027 to construct. So we've worked out an agreement with the MPO to build it early, cash flow up front, get reimbursed in 2027. And the last three, Cherry Street Bridge, this is part of the 2022 GEO bond. We are in design right now. I actually have an update meeting this week with our consultant to talk through the hydrology and hydraulic modeling of that project to understand how much we can reduce the floodplain upstream and potentially downstream of that structure, and what kind of a size we actually need to accomplish our goals on that project. So design is ongoing. You'll notice I don't have a construction timeline on that particular project because I want to make sure that Jersey Street and 32 are both complete before we shut that bridge down. Closing that bridge for construction creates an issue where you've got a couple of parcels between 32 and Cherry Street with limited options to get out. So that one's another one kind of to be determined, depending on how some of these other projects fall in place. And then the design of 191st Street from Tomlinson to Grand Park Boulevard, you'll recall that that is also in the 2022 GEO bond. We are actively working on design for a widening project from Tomlinson to Grand Park Boulevard, inclusive of a roundabout at 191st and Grand Park Boulevard. And then lastly, Little Eagle Creek Avenue, widening phase 1, that's from 146th Street up to 159th Street. That was a project we received NDOT roll call funding on as well. And our 20% match for construction is budgeted, will be budgeted in the 2025 budget. Those are all the projects that we have both in the 2024 proposed budget and also contemplated for 2025. Certainly there's a long list of other projects that we've identified as a staff and as a community that need to be done. And at that point, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, John. Councilors?
Can you send this over to the council so we each have a copy?
Absolutely.
Jonathan, one thing if you could do, and I know it's kind of putting a hat on and making, looking in the future, but I'd be interested in knowing what staff feels would be the top 5 or 6 projects in addition to these as we look into 25 and 26. I think it's important. It would help us as we start to think about the future and where we're going next and how to account for dollars as we move forward.
Absolutely.
That would really be helpful if you could do that maybe in the next couple of weeks.
I've got the list ready. I can send it to you tonight.
I know. Thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate your update. Okay, our final update this evening will be from Linda Nass. It's a Q2 report from the RDC.
Mr. President and councilors, this is the report for the second quarter of 2023, which ended June 30th. We only had one meeting during that quarter, but I wanted to update on some things that are in work and process. So far we've had 3 meetings this year, January, March, and May. February was canceled, April, and June. So we are anticipating a meeting next Monday night on the 17th of July. And then there is a request by email going around for a joint meeting of the council and the RDC to be determined. So we don't have a date on that. As a consequence of not having these monthly meetings, because at the end of 2022, we passed the schedule for the meetings for 2023, which were to be monthly, claims are now not being approved monthly and consequently not being paid monthly. So I just wanted to give an update that this should not change, that vendors should submit invoices monthly. And to date, O.W. Crone has submitted monthly invoices. Some are not approved yet and therefore not paid. Taft has lastly submitted an April statement for expenses through March. We have received nothing since then. This is now July. Maybe we will have something at next meeting. Haven't gotten it yet. Debts and leases, just to let you know, debts and leases with principal and interest are being paid timely. They always are, whether we meet or not. Those payments usually happen on each one of them twice a year, and those get mailed, and timely, okay? So I wanted to just kind of summarize that for you. As far as old business or requests made for the next meeting, we're still waiting on a letter of engagement / contract from Taft for the Grand Park RFP expenses. In January, when we had a meeting, we were told to expect that at the February meeting. We didn't have a meeting, but we have not received that yet. We didn't receive it in March or May, and we're still waiting on that. We did get a letter of engagement on the other expenses, but there are 2 letters, one for the regular RDC funds expenditures and the one for the RFP. But we have made some payments on that. So wanted to let you know that. Other things that we're waiting for is we're expecting a financial tracking report from Matt's staff. They've put together so that they track the revenues versus expenses for each event out at Grand Park. And so they're supposed to bring that to our July meeting and share with us so we can see what's going on there. They're also expected to bring capital plans for the RDC for this coming year. We're expecting the third is a spreadsheet on sponsorship revenues and expenses. We discussed this at the last meeting because as we're looking at that, we're finding out with all the legal expenses and the sponsorship percentage that we pay to LSG, some of our smaller sponsorships aren't netting us very much money. So we want to have a spreadsheet that shows us what that is, if it's even worth some going after some of these. Maybe we're actually not making anything on some of them, especially some of the smaller ones. So we had a lengthy discussion on that, and that's what we agreed upon, to have a spreadsheet made for us to look at so we can tell per what we're normally given in a report. Like we get a quarterly report on Grand Park, it's the gross revenues. But when we started looking at what the net revenues are, some of them aren't very much at all, okay? The reclassification of 2023 expenses between TIF funds and Grand Park operating funds. So we have realized, especially since last year was the first year we got a detail from Taft on what expenses are actually used for, what we're paying for in our, on the invoices. Last year was the first year we got that. And we realized that we're paying out of our TIF monies, which you all were budgeting for TIF general fund expenses this year, but some of that is just Grand Park operating costs. Okay, so when Taft is looking over user agreements or sponsorship agreements or anything that has to do with the operation of Grand Park, we want to put those expenditures against Grand Park, not against a general fund for TIFs. And so we decided at the meeting, we were all in agreement of, since we can't go back last year, we don't believe we can, that we will go back to the beginning of 2023 and we will break those out. I had a draft but, at the meeting with me last month, but others are going to look at that and we're going to break it out, especially if we're looking at a new agreement for management with Grand Park. The city should not, or the TIF or the RDC should not be left with paying expenses that don't belong to us. So everyone was in really good agreement on that. So we hope to see something coming forward at next Monday night's meeting so we can start working on that. At the May, this is just the same thing. So at the May meeting, we agreed that we need policy and procedures be put in place for the classification of expenses per TIF district and distinct from Grand Park operating. And that specifically had to do with legal review, but we've also seen in some of the OW Crone invoices, some of those have nothing to do with TIF. They're doing something for Grand Park, and we think that should be an expense of Grand Park. Okay, so we also recognized and understood that really up until 2019, personnel costs for Grand Park were not paid by Grand Park operating, they were paid from the city. And a lot of things for Grand Park were paying out of administrative accounts. So we're getting to the point with not looking at this, dividing it out, and not going forward in that way, especially since we're looking at, and we don't know what the agreements might be upcoming from this RFP, but we're expecting something different. So we want to make sure we get all those costs and expenses associated to the revenue sources for them, okay? So we all agreed on that. We have, and I think you're probably all aware, there were some legislative changes in TIF rules and tax increment legislation changes that came out. You've probably read about that. It's really, difficult, concentrated reading if you read it from the State House, but Baker Tilly put out a really nice little article about it where they just kind of summarized it for us. And I sent that out to some folks today. But it has to do with, some of them are very basic changes, some will be more significant. It has to do with allowing, one of them is that TIF revenues, and I think Mr. Fry mentioned it earlier, can be used for police and fire services. That is a big change. Another one is that they have to, the RDC has to, and that goes back to 2023, beginning of the year, so we can go back and change that out. The RDC has to have an annual spending plan set up that must be for the next year that talks about what projects they have in their spending plan, and that goes into effect the beginning of next year, so we'll start seeing those at the end of next year when they have to actually submit it. There will be different management reports for the annual Gateway TIF management reports that will give more information, that will talk more about, basically two requirements, but it will just give more information. It's some of the information that we've been asking for all along, that we think O.W. Crone and others are putting together. We just don't always see it. We kind of have to dig for it. So there's, I think, four basic things to that change in legislation that we should benefit from as an RDC and as a city. As far as the Grand Park RFP, no news, nothing presented to the committee to the RDC by the committee. That's all being done just by committee, so we're not privy to what's going on there. We ratified at the last meeting one resolution. It was an appropriation and budget ratification, so we finally got some more of the numbers correct in the budget and passed that for 2023 as Resolution 04-2023, and as it was being passed, it was passed with a caveat that it had to be reviewed to make sure these accounts and numbers are correct. So that will be looked again. We passed it based on that being done and that being accurate. It's really, that's all I have. Sorry. Took too long. Any questions?
Questions?
Okay. Thank you.
I would like to at least compliment you on your efforts to separate TIF expenses from Grant Park expenses.
Yeah.
If anything is accomplished this year, I think that's a critical thing to do. And again, I'd like to compliment the RDC on doing that.
I know the council has wanted to do that since they came forward, but it was a real eye-opener for the whole commission to realize, what do you mean we haven't been doing that? Well, if you don't have the information, you can't do it. And it wasn't, it wasn't like it was a fault of the clerk treasurer because they didn't have the information to break it down either. So we're hoping to continue to get the detailed information in the future so we can do what we're going to go back and do starting this year.
Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our reports for this evening. Moving on to old business, we have one item of old business. That would be ordinance 23-13, prohibiting the use of public records for commercial purposes. This item had a council introduction of June 26th. It's up for adoption consideration this evening, July 10th. The ordinance was put together by Marla Ayler of our clerk's department, and I addressed it last time and tried to do the best job I could, but I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Marla, this evening.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was absent. I was in Fort Wayne for a clerk treasurer's conference. This ordinance is not really something that I created, more than I borrowed it from other municipalities. It's kind of a template or a slate that others are using. But I know there were some questions about its purpose, and I had just a minute to even ask Mr. Hersig about this because it is a little confusing. But I'll give you a couple examples is what I thought. So one request that we had is from a company called Smart Procure, and they sent us an electronic request. They're submitting a public records request to the city of Westfield for any and all purchasing records from January 1st of 2021 to current. The request is limited to readily available records without physically copying, scanning, or printing paper documents, but they would like them to be editable electronic documents, including purchase order numbers. Purchase order numbers are not used as a comparable substitute, for example. Then they would be happy to accept an invoice, encumbrance, or a check number, along with the purchase date, detailed description of the purchase item, line item quantity, the price, and the vendor name. These are the types of requests that we're trying to avoid. Again, Smart Procure was wanting it to use for commercial purposes. A more difficult example was from the Freedom of Information Act officer who represents the National Freedom of Information Coalition, which is a not-for-profit, but they wanted to know if they could have all of our residential properties that had had a water shutoff status within the last 30 days. Now, it's easier for us to respond to that since we don't own our water. We don't send that. They'd need to contact citizens in order to do that. But these are the types of requests that now we can just tell them no. Here, well, we can send them this ordinance and ask, for what purpose do you need this? But in a nutshell, it saves us time, energy, work, and creates efficiencies that we talked about this morning at the Finance Committee. So if you have any other questions, I will attempt to answer them, but I think there will be continued questions about which ones we do have to fill or don't. We definitely don't want to turn a resident away, and we're always sure to fill those as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Marla. Councilors, any questions?
It's probably more of a legal question for me. So what happens when we deny something and then they come back and say, no, we're going to sue you? And do they have standing then at that point, even though we have this resolution?
They can take one of a couple different approaches. They can file a complaint with the Public Access Counselor. That's an advisory opinion, but it gives you the ability as the filer to potentially get attorney's fees if you win in a lawsuit. Then if they get their opinion, then they can pursue a lawsuit in our trial court. For something like this, I just don't see somebody filing a suit expending that kind of money when it's usually pretty cut and dry about what it's for. It's usually, I'm not going to comment on specific ones, but it's usually something like, hey, give me all the procurement data you have for the last 10 years about this swath of property. Well, that's not going to be for the public at large, and it's not going to be for anything other than a commercial purpose.
I think it's going to be an issue, though, at certain levels of the discretion that the clerk treasurer's office then would have to figure out, because someone could come in and say, no, it's for me personally, and they don't really have to tell you what they're going to use that information for legally.
Well, it wouldn't. It would go to legal counsel, and that'd be our determination, right?
So then it's on.
We would ask all those questions, so it's not, and we have to be consistent. So you can't say, just because I like, Joe Smith down the street and his company, I'm going to give him all this information, but I don't like the guy out of California, I'm not going to give him the same information. It doesn't matter. So that's why moving forward, it's really important to implement this in a really consistent way.
Yeah.
And part of our procedure, just so you know, when we receive a request, so often it's maybe from a resident we know, we actually know where the request is coming from, but when we don't, or when we have a question, it's always forwarded to really Will and Manny at the same time right now, just so that we, and we'll ask, but we have to fill them prior to the passage of this. So we have to deal with these, but we also can charge to this moment, but it takes far, far more man-hours to fill the requests than what council would be very happy about.
We can't make this retroactive in its date, right? Thank you.
Any other questions, councilors? Hearing none, do I have a motion regarding ordinance 23-13?
Motion approved.
Have a second.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Patton to approve ordinance 20-13, seconded by Counselor Speljeruk. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spiljeruk.
Yes.
Motion carries, and I thank you 5-0.
Thank you. There is no new business tonight. Kevin, do we have any residents who wish to address the council this evening?
Yeah, we do. I currently have 3 cards. Sharon Williams.
State Road 32 between Crew Car Wash and Burger King. The council did approve of them building their property. Now, what I'm complaining about is the senior abuse of it. I also received a DNR complaint, a threat, that said I had to answer within 18 days or the city of Westfield would acquiesce my property. Now, in my determination, because I typed for the Department of the Army, court martials, and 8 pages a day of manuals, legal manuals, okay? And then I had to read those 8 pages and then redo them, okay? So that's the whatever I've had in reading legal documents, okay? What I'm complaining about is the council's approval and the senior abuse that you have given to me for since 2007, when the treasurer of Hamilton County decided that she was going to steal my property. The Hamilton County Council sent us both an eminent domain. They did that. Then the treasurer took it off of my property taxes. I sent all this information to the United States Justice Department Consumer Protection Agency in Washington, D.C. So they already have all those copies, and I have an account number, okay? What I am objecting to is any city council in the United States approving of building and causing dams on all 4 sides of their property to cause them a flood. I pay FEMA insurance every year. I just did pay it and got a return receipt that they received my money. Okay, I pay all of my bills 5 months ahead. The other thing I would like to ask you, I do know, because it was printed in the Indianapolis Star, that the employees in the city of Westfield received approximately $5 million. I won't say any more than that because I don't think it is any more than that. I haven't got that paper right before me. But I did add it up after it was printed out, and I did copy it. Okay, the council's salary is, I'm assuming, $20,000 a year. I don't know about that. That's gossip as far as I'm concerned.
That's 3 minutes. Thank you.
What?
That's time.
That didn't mark that, and you're very rude because you let everybody else talk, but I'm the only one that's doing it, and you're being very rude and nasty, and that's senior abuse.
I didn't mean to be, ma'am. It's just 3 minutes. Same as everyone.
You're abusive.
Let me ask you a question. I assume you're saying that they built up dirt on either side of your property, correct?
They built it on either side of my property, and the prime car wash in front of me has about a 20-foot rise in.
You're across the street though, right, from Prime Car Wash?
Yeah.
Okay,
Lived there since 1965.
okay,
My property's paid for, it's been paid for, I do not have any bills for my property
no problem.
since 1984.
I will walk, I will come out and walk and look at your property, and I'll talk to Jeremy. If somebody's built up land around you, so all your water can't get out, and we'll find out. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a Houston, I've already written, like I said,
Okay.
the Justice Department. Governor Bai answered me, Governor Evan Bai, on these issues, and who else was it? The NDOT. The legal officials, or so they say, threatened me and said that this was their property. It's not their property.
I'll come out next week, okay?
At my house,
Yep.
they're not hard. 'Cause
No, no problem.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kevin?
Judy Shuck.
Judy Stanley Shuck, 209 West Main Street, Westfield. A lot of crazy things have been happening in our family to cause us to travel some Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. And one of the things that I have noticed is as soon as we get to Westfield, we have weeds everywhere. You know, NDOT has put up trees along the side of the road that are getting overcome by weeds also. But my thought is, when people are traveling and looking at those weeds and so forth, do they think, well, I wonder what Westfield looks on the inside if they have weeds on the outside? And so you go around town, though, and you come up to this multi-million-dollar beautiful park, I guess, and they put millions of dollars worth of plants in there. And I know some of those plants because I have them in my yard. And the weeds are overcoming the flowers that they planted. And it's sad to me. Mrs. Poindexter has always made remark about when she's coming into Westfield, and other people have too, about what my flowers look like on 32. They have left notes on my front porch about the beautiful flowers when they're sitting in traffic on 32. But, you know, the neighborhoods pay HOA fees to keep their entrances beautiful and everything like that. Why do we have to have weeds in a park that is going to choke out all of the money that we have put in to these flowers?
Thank you, Ms. Shuck. Kevin?
The last card I have is Dave Miller.
I'm Dave Miller, 16950 Bridgewater Club Boulevard here at Westfield. I have an announcement to make tonight, and it's a nice announcement. I got back today from the printer the front cover of a book, and the book is Westfield, A Period of Growth and Progress. It takes the last 25 years, 1998 through 2023. It has 41 different authors in this book, and it's capturing the things that have been going on so rapidly. If you think about it, you know, in the last 25 years, it's been a tremendous amount of change that has gone on. So I want to pass this around so you can see what it looks like. And anybody in the audience who'd like to see it, you're welcome afterwards. We can talk about it. But I want to tell you what some of the chapters are, some of my favorite chapters in the book. I've got Steve Hankey, who's talking 3 different chapters about Bridgewater, the first PUD here in Westfield, about Chatham, and also about his experience with the Grand Park, when he developed Grand Park. And so Chief Rush and Chief Gaylor gave wonderful historical backgrounds of our police department and our fire department here in Westfield that's captured for the future. Cassie Kaysen, Mayor Cook had 2 chapters in there. One is about Westfield's Grand Park and also being the first mayor of Westfield. Julie So gave a chapter on the Chamber of Commerce, and she was here for a number of years and captured some of that information. Our Joe Plankus here, the first comp plan, which many of us met in this room to try to put this plan together, and Joe captured that as a leader of that group. Don Moore here behind me had a chapter on his family moving to Westfield and how he got to Westfield itself. Downtown Association with Teresa Otis Skelton. We have a diversity, a profile of who we are here in Westfield. We have student impact, and I call it kind and serving community, a kind and serving community. We have people like Student Impact with Danielle Esterhaus, we have Heart and Soul, we have Open Doors, we have Youth Assistance, and we have Baby Box. All of those are chapters in this book. Eric Lohe wrote a chapter on churches. There's 27 different churches in Westfield. That school, Dr. Keene talked about the schools and the Grand Junction, and Park Street by Bob Beauchamp, and the Historical Society and what they've done here with Diane Payton. So just to kind of conclude here, we've got Kiwanis, great service organization with the flags we've had, with Jake Plummer, Lions Club, Bob Benson, and the whole Lions Club put something together, the Rotary Club, and the Riverview Hospital. So I would like to just conclude by saying this is going to be available in October, maybe September, but probably October. It's at the printers right now, and you can pick this up at the Historical Society, the library, or the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Marla, do you have any comments from the Clerk Treasurer's Office?
I don't. If you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to address them when we can, but
Thank you.
we've got nothing.
Thank you. City Council comments.
Can I say one thing? Our city puts on this incredible regional draw, this 4th of July festival that we do. And I just want to say an especially big thanks to our Westfield Welcome Team, all the volunteers, our public safety folks, our public works folks. Often they don't get recognized for all they do to prepare for this too. There's just a whole host of people that it takes to put on a huge event like that. So I really want to thank everybody. The feedback's always stellar, and I think it just keeps getting better every year. So thank you.
I'd add to that and say that was the best fireworks display I've ever seen anywhere, anytime, any place. It was awesome. So if you missed it, you missed the big one. So, I will give the report from the APC this week. There were basically 3 items on that agenda. We had 1 consent item agenda. We approved the development plan for an animal eye clinic at 4750 Clarney Drive. 1 item of business, Wheeler Landing, PUD, Amendment 6. That was approved 6-1. I actually voted against that item, and I believe there were a couple issues I was concerned with. One that we were looking at a 10-year sunset clause where we've been approving everything with 5 years. And there's also an issue there that if approved, as it was by the APC, that it would allow multifamily business in that area. So that's something I think that it was pulled from the agenda tonight, or not on the agenda tonight. So look forward to seeing that at a future council meeting. And then we also had a public hearing on Bonterra PUD Amendment 1, which has to do with amending the Bonterra PUD to allow for retail business on 2.6 acres there. So that was held as a public hearing, and that will be coming forward to the workshop, I believe. The only other comment I had for this evening was I did want to thank Mark Hall and Lisa Hall and their friendly feeding team organization for installing the pantry number 53, which is just behind this building. And certainly we appreciate their efforts to help feed the hungry in Westfield. So, counselors, any other comments?
Just real quick, Finance Committee, we talked about a couple different ways to start understanding, managing budgets, by understanding trends. Talked about department heads putting together, before the next Finance Committee meeting, their written narratives on their departments, what's worked well, what needs to be improved, and efficiencies they can gain, and then anything else that they can think of there. And then just one thing that kind of I was thinking about with the police department and talking about the bids, and one thing I think that we could do as a city going forward is, and we've had this issue in the past, where we put out an RFP for a bid process, but there has been times where we don't go out and seek bids, and I think clearly, I mean, we need to be more proactive in seeking companies to bid on certain projects, and if that means doing so and making that happen, so that way we don't have, for instance, and not to bring up the tunnel again, but something where we didn't bid. I mean, that makes no sense. So just some thoughts there. But anyways, that was it. Finance Committee meeting was this morning. We'll do another one next month, and hopefully we'll get more into the weeds on the finances. But we kind of highlighted a few areas. So.
Okay, thank you, Troy.
Yep.
One last thought. We had hoped to have a combined council meeting, RDC meeting 2 weeks from today. We had some conflicts between, I think the mayor might be out of town, some RDC folks were out of town, some of our councilors were in and out, and so that meeting will be held sometime in the month of August, and it'll be announced beforehand, and obviously the public will be notified of that. So we will, in fact, then have a second meeting, council meeting, 2 weeks from today on July 24th here at 7 o'clock. So that being said, hearing nothing else, I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight, and we'll close this meeting. Thank you.
We need to sign stuff.